are right now perhaps at one of the most unstable periods in geopolitics. There are at least two major wars going on. There's uncertainty on the economic front and of course major elections, India and the United States apart from others. Now, who best to talk about all of this than Ian Bremmer? He is, I would say, one of the foremost political scientists and often consults top CEOs, world leaders. We've got the opportunity to speak with him here in Mumbai. So, Ian, thank you so much for speaking with us at the NDTV network.
Yeah, very happy to be here.
Yeah. So, I know in this Mumbai visit, you've been meeting a lot of CEOs, closed-door meetings. Let me begin with what is the first question everyone's asking you?
I wouldn't say that the first question is consistent, but it's around the same big issues, which is that we have an enormous amount of macro geopolitical uncertainty. The future of globalization is not going the way the companies want it to. Politics is inserting itself into the global marketplace. The wars are a big part of that. U.S.-China relations a big part of that. U.S. elections a big part of that. And all four of those are not going well. None of them are being managed easily. And the pressures in all of these major issues are more negative. In fact, of everything that you said when you introduced me, the only thing that looks stable and consistent politically is the India election. Everything else is problematic. And so that's what they're asking me about.
All right, but maybe the first question or the issue or the concern is not the India election for all the CEOs you've been talking to.
Absolutely not.
But for our audience, this is the biggest talking point right now. And it usually begins with a number. So the assumption as per pollsters, at least before the elections began, is that we're going to have continuity, policy continuity, perhaps a third term in all likelihood of the Modi government. The question is by how much? Now you need 273 to form a government. Does BJP get more than it did last time on its own? What's the number you guys have?
Eurasia Group is pretty consistent with where Modi and the BJP landed last time around, so it's 305 plus or minus 10 seats. My interest is not in the exact number. My interest is that of all the elections in the world this year, India, the largest democracy that is going to the ballot place, India also one of the countries with the smoothest transition. Right? There's not a lot of uncertainty about the legitimacy of the system. It is seen to be free and fair and transparent. And Modi, who has been in power now for 2 terms, is almost certainly going to be in power for another term on the back of pretty strong economic performance and consistent reform. That is, in the grand scheme of things, a very stabilizing message.
But you guys do have a number.
No, as I said, 305 plus or minus 10 is the number.
Okay,
yes.
So 305 plus minus 10 is the number. Now, what does it mean for a third term and a political stable situation for India in terms of how the world is seeing India? I mean, right now for us, the conversation is about how India is the third largest economy sooner than later, how we are now a global power to reckon with. Is that something we're telling ourselves, or is the world also seeing it that way?
Oh, the world is definitely seeing it. The world has seen that India has underperformed for decades. India has this incredible demographic weight around the world, and they also, of course, have very strong intellectual capital and so many STEM graduates. And so many American CEOs come from India, Silicon Valley, right? And not just in the United States and Canada, all over the world. And yet India as an economy has underperformed. And now not only do we see Indian growth picking up, do we see India becoming the 4th largest economy in the world likely next year, the 3rd largest economy in the world probably by 2028. That's a big deal. But also India, as it becomes more powerful, defining itself in terms of friendship with the rest of the world, as a bridge to engage in stronger, more stable relations, as a leader of the global south, as stronger relations with the U.S., with the West. Canada's an exception. They haven't managed that well, but the rest of the G7, they've managed very effectively, and even stabilizing to a little degree, a limited degree, the Indian relationship with China in recent days. So I think not only is India seen as a more positive story, but India is also not perceived as a threat to the global stage. It's seen as a constructive part of a global economy that doesn't have many good stories like that today. So that's the reason why the West is paying attention.
In terms of how India has positioned herself, whether it was when Ukraine-Russia broke out, we continued to import Russian oil because we needed it, though it was something the West didn't necessarily like. On Israel and Gaza, we've been very clear on the humanitarian aspect of it, but we haven't really, quote-unquote, taken a side. Do you think that that's gone down well?
Well, it's funny. India, of course, is importing an enormous amount of oil from Russia, but that's completely consistent with U.S. policy. The Americans at no point wanted to cut off all oil export from Russia because it would have caused a global recession. It would have led to oil prices far higher. Would have probably meant that Biden would have no chance of being president again. So it wasn't like the Americans were telling the Indians, we're very angry at you for importing this oil at a discount, by the way, so the Russians don't get quite as much profit. Same thing is true for the export of uranium or the export of food or the export of fertilizer. The revealed American preference is that the U.S. supports Ukraine, but not so much that it hurts the Americans. And India, of course, to a great degree feels the same way. India supports Ukrainian sovereignty. India doesn't want the Russian invasion of Ukraine to continue, but India is going to keep doing business with Russia. Now, the one place that we see more strategic alignment is in the defense sector. And India is now, of course, building out its naval capabilities. It sees itself geopolitically as an island where the relations on its land borders aren't so great. But who's going to work with India to build that naval capacity? Increasingly, the United States and the West. How about in avionics, for example? How about in advanced military capabilities for Indian defense more broadly? And the spending is going up. Increasingly, the United States, including production with the Indians on the ground in India. The U.S. is paying much more attention to that, much more attention to India's membership in the Quad, much more attention to Indian alignment with the United States on broader strategic issues in Asia.